So we're going to look at putting together a character package for distribution and bringing all the pieces together in Daz Studio. I'm not going to show you how to do the actual modeling of a morph in ZBrush or Hexagon or Modo, whatever you're using. I'm not going to show you how to paint textures in ZBrush or Deep Paint or whatever you use to paint your textures in. And I'm not going to show you how to set the specific surface settings for the materials. I will show you how to save materials and how to work with them and do some neat tricks with them, but I'm not going to show you how to actually set them up because that would be beyond the scope of this tutorial. And so first things, in Daz Studio, if you haven't already done it, or if you did something other when you signed up or set up, when you set up Daz Studio, check your authorship information. It's under your preferences under Edit there if you were watching, and check it, make sure that's your PA name and then your PA store, or your vendor name, your store email address. That information gets written out to every file that you save, and it's visible. The user-facing files, it's visible to anybody using your files. So you want to make sure that that's good, valid, public consumption information. First thing you do whenever you start a new project is to create a new folder. That way you're always working in a nice clean folder and everything's separate and organized. This one here, because I'm making a character tutorial, it's called Characters. Inside that I have a content folder. That would be equivalent to My Library, a lot of people have, or whatever you wanted to name it. When you name it Content, Studio reads the folder above it for the name over here in the library. So that's that folder mapped in. I mapped in the content folder, and it says Characters. That way I can have a lot of content folders in different folders. I could have a poses content folder. I could have a whatever the project name I'm working on, and then inside that have a content folder, and over here it would show up as the other folder's name. It makes it easy to keep track of where everything is. In that content folder, I've got this building folder, which is just temporary. It's got some presets in there so I don't have to stop and set up materials while I'm doing the tutorial. Because I'm doing a character, I went and started the folder structure for people, Genesis 3 male characters, and then my character name is going to be Bob. And that's as far as I went on that. We'll do the rest when I get there. Runtime, I already have the textures over here because I'm not showing you how to make textures. And so, of course, runtime textures, PA name, product name. And full disclosure, these aren't my textures. I borrowed them from another character for the purposes of making this video. In your case, these would be your textures that you made yourself. And I also have back here next to the content folder, I have a mesh folder, and that's just containing the OBJs, all the model that I've already done, because I'm not showing how to do the modeling either. So I've got the content folder all set up and mapped into Studio, and again, there's nothing interesting there except for those. But we're going to go ahead and load in a blank Genesis 3 male because that's the character I'm making it for. And you can see there that's not the default Genesis 3 male that comes with the starter essentials, because that one is horrible for creating content on. What I did is I loaded that one in, went to the skin, lips, and nails, set it to a default color. I think I applied the default shader to most of the surfaces, not all of them obviously, but most of the surfaces I put the default shader on. Ripped off all the texture maps, gave it a nice solid color. I left the eyes and the inner mouth and teeth and all that so I could see them in case they poke through or anything like that. But the skin itself, I went with a nice plain solid color so I can actually see the mesh as I'm working with it, instead of having textures making things look different than they should. I also went in and I took off the mouth realism HD morph and the navel morph, and then resaved out a character preset, and then I added that to my toolbar. And the reason you want to use a blank fresh one like this is because if you're not, you're inevitably going to forget to turn off the the mouth realism HD or the navel morph, and you're going to wind up baking those into your morph, and it's going to mess up the teeth. So if you're doing anything for a character, Genesis 3 male or female, you really want to save your own character preset and work from that to avoid messing up the teeth. I've already got my morph OBJs over here in the mesh folder, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring those in. There's nothing fancy about them. I got a head and I got a body morph, and it's these two right here. And you can see I named them here full body morph, Bob, and full head morph, Bob. Named the OBJs the same as I went the morph named. It keeps things tidier. Inside there's an ID, which is actually the OBJ name. And you can't really change that. If you do, things break horribly. So once it's read in, it's kind of set. And so just to keep things nice and clean, I like to have the actual morph name there. Plus it means that it comes up there. I don't have to change any of these settings because the defaults are right for everything. And that puts them here in the morph floater group, which is of course wrong, but I'm going to change that later. It's just nice to have everything in the morph loader group. That way all your morphs that you're working on are in the same spot at the same time. It makes them easy to get a hold of them, or get to and work on. So here I've applied the body morph. And just to keep things clean, I'm going to go ahead and set those limits because I'm going to be dialing back and forth. So I'm going to go into edit mode and then click them both and set min-max limits, set the minimum limit to 0. That way when I dial back it stops at 0. So there's the body morph. And whenever you do a morph for Genesis, any figure Genesis, really any figure, you can see there that the hand, if you watch the hand there, you can see the hand moving in and out. Everything moves in and out, but the hand in particular is easiest to see. The hand moves in and out. The bones, however, for the hand don't move in and out. None of the bones move in and out. And that causes a problem when you go to pose it. If we were to pose it now, we get all sorts of weird stuff. Like, here, let me zoom in on the hand. Right, so I bent the fingers, and you can see there the fingers all distort, and that's because the bones are still in the same spot as they were, but the mesh itself has moved. So whenever you do a morph that moves mesh around the bones, you need to adjust the rigging to the shape. To do that, we're going to go back to our morph dialed in. Let me get back to the figure. And the joint editor tool selected. We're going to go ahead and edit and adjust rigging to shape. On this side here are the bones that are going to get adjusted. On this side here are the face groups that are going to influence how those bones get adjusted. And in this case, we're only doing the body morph. So we're only doing the body morph. So I'm going to scroll down to the head, and I'm going to uncheck selected and its children. I don't want those bones adjusted, and I don't want the head morph or the head face group, the eye face group, the lower jaw, the other eye, basically the face groups that are in the head, the tongue and the upper jaw. I don't want those involved, and the defaults are fine for everything else. And there, the bones jumped. If you didn't see it, I'll undo it and redo it. There's undo, there's redo, there's undo, there's redo. So you can see the bones jumping. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ERC freeze all that bone adjustment to my full body morph dial. And I always check the top, check the bottom, just to make sure that there's bones at each end and that I haven't had other dials got bumped and aren't at their default values. So I only freeze the bones to the morph. There we go. And now you can see that when I dial the morph, the bones move with it. We can go back in, we can double check the hand. Although I think I turned my morph off. Yeah. So we can double check the hand here real quick. And you can see the fingers move much nicer now. It's also a good idea, after you've adjusted the rigging, let me get that back, Alt, click, it's back at 0. It's also a good idea after you've adjusted the rigging, to go through every bone basically, skip the hip, but every bone and bend it, go side to side, look at them and evaluate whether or not you're going to want to do a JCM for the various joints. I'm not going to go through all that. I'll show you how to do an EJCM in a minute on the head, and that'll cover the same idea. But you want to go through all the joints and check how well they bend and decide if you need to do a corrective for them. And if you do, you can go ahead and do the correctives now. I'm going to jump ahead though and go to the head. And again, we got the same problem with the head. If you come over here to the morph, go ahead and turn the body off. We're done with that for now. And you apply the head morph. You can see I did a lot of movement there. And again, Genesis 3 figures have all these facial rigging bones in there. If you go under head and upper face rig and lower jaw, lower face rig. So you got all these facial rigging bones. If you don't see them, you're going to want to go into your scene pane and then show hidden nodes. It's off by default, so that users aren't having to scroll through all this and fight with all that. But if you show them, you can see them. And since you're making content, you should see what's going on. But you can see they don't move. Because they don't move, things like expressions and the pose controls on the head just aren't going to work right, because the joints for various parts are still back in their defaults instead of where the mesh is moved to. For example, here if I take the eyes and I go up and down, you can see if I get the bones out of the way, you can see the eyes popping out of the socket there. And if I go side to side, they'll do the same thing. So it's finally important that after you do a head morph, you adjust the rigging to the shape as well. So we got the head morph dialed in, and the joint editor tool selected, and we go edit and adjust regular shape. Now on the head, I often run into problems because Daz Studio is doing a lot of math there and it's trying to just figure out how far a bone should move relative to the mesh that's near it. And I always just run into problems with a couple of bones in particular. So I'm going to show you how I usually do it. If you can get away with doing them all at once, you can do them all at once. I usually do them in a couple of passes just to make sure that it's fine-tuned a little bit more. So here I'm going to uncheck all because I'm only doing the head. I'm going to scroll down to the head, and then I'm going to check children, and I'm going to check selected and children. I'm going to scroll down to the bones that always give me an issue, and that would be the eyelids. Eyelids. The inner squints for some reason. Left eye and the right eye. And then I'm going to uncheck all the groups. I only want the head, the lower jaw, tongue, and the upper jaw to influence where those bones move to. And you can see there they jumped. I'm going to go ahead and do another pass to get the squint bones. There's the inner squint, and there's the other inner squint. And on those I'm going to do just the head mesh. And they moved. And now I'm going to go back and do the eyes and the eyelids. And again, if doing them all at once works for you, you can do them all at once. I just run into issues with it enough that I just assume go ahead and do them separately from the get-go. And then uncheck and get the two eyes. There's the left eye. Where's the right eye? Right eye, right eye, right eye, right eye. And now that all those bones have been adjusted, I'm going to go ahead and do the ERC freeze and check, make sure it's just the bones getting adjusted and I don't have something weird going on. And now you can see that the bones move with the head morph. And if we're lucky, the eyes will go side to side without flying out of the head. Let me get the bones out of the way. So that worked good, and that works good. Alright, so we fixed that. The other thing we want to check with the eyes in particular is that they're able to close, and they're not, because I did too much morphing around the eyes. So there's two ways to fix this. I'm going to show you both ways, because I have two eyes to fix. It works out nicely. One way is using a parameter. Yeah, one way is using a parameter dial. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and, because that's pretty even, I'm going to go ahead and see if this doesn't fix it. In fact, I know it does, and I know the amount. And this one, again, I know the amount. So we'll go like that, and that fixes it. I don't want users to have to do that, so I'm going to go ahead and create a new dial under the morph loader, so I'm keeping everything together. I'm going to create a new property. I'm going to call that E for expression JCM, because it's a joint corrective morph, even though it's an expression, it's more than one joint still. And we'll go character name, and then what it does the eye close left. Hit tab, it carries it down there. We're going to wind up hiding this eventually, so we don't really worry about anything else. I'm going to go ahead and set the limit because I like limits set. Now I want that morph, I want this parameter, I want this dial to do the eyelids, which are currently dialed in, so I'm going to go ahead and do ERC freeze right now. You can see here it's got the eye close. I don't want this dial to control eye close. I don't want this dial to control the head. I just want this dial to control the eyelids, upper and lower. And of course when you hit the button it resets everything. So I'm going to Control Shift F just to make sure everything really reset. I'm going to dial my head back in. I'm going to close that eye again. And we'll go to my new dial here, and you can see that it works. It closes the eye just fine. There's two ways to set this up so that it applies automatically. They both give you the same end results. There's one way, but there's two ways to go about it. There's probably more than two ways, but I'm going to show you the two ways. First way is the way I typically don't do it, but here's the way it goes. You've got all the dials that are involved dialed up, and you're going to go find the dial over here, the eye closed left, the one that does the controlling, I guess you can call it. We're going to go ERC freeze, and then over here we're going to check on attenuate, or we're going to leave it as subcomponents. We've got to select the node, which is going to be the male, And we're going to select a property, which is going to be over here. It's going to be our head morph. And the, it's going to be the head morph. And the attenuate, this section up here, this is the multiply of the ERC formulas. And the rule of thumb, the standard practice, is that you multiply against your character. And so we're going to multiply against the head. It's going to apply to the control eyes left. And that's the one that's left. Yeah, that all works out. So we hit OK, and then I'm going to go ahead and restore the figure just in case. We'll apply that eye close again. I'm going to come over here and apply my head, and you can see that the EJCM automatically applies along with the head. And then just to double check, we're going to undial the eye close. Come over here and make sure that the EJCM is undialed. Okay, and it has. And here's the other way you can go about setting up an EJCM. We'll do the other eye. So let me turn them over here. We'll do the other eye and get the head morph dialed in. And we're going to close that eye. And then we're going to go to mesh resolution, kick it back down into base, and we're going to export that. That's the export button. I got one over here too. It's normally over here by default. So you can go File, Export. I put a button over here because I'm always using it along with Morph Loader, so it made more sense to me. And I'm going to export EJCM Bob eye close right OBJ. I'm not actually going to export that because I've already fixed that one. I don't want to write over it. But you export the OBJ, take it into your modeler, do the modeling to fix that, and then we're going to bring it back in. We'll bring it back in the same state. You can change that back, it doesn't matter. But we're going to bring it back in with the same state. The eye is still closed, the head is still dialed. It's the same state as it was when we exported it. I'm going to go into Morph Loader, Pro, select my object. The name is right, and this time I'm going to go ahead and say reverse deformations yes, because I wanted to take out the head morph and the default eye close effect. So it's basically going to subtract everything that's happening right now. It's going to subtract that from my morph when it creates the morph. So now we've got this one here, which is my eye close right, and you can see that works. And here's the way I usually set up ERC when there's a multiply involved, just because I don't know, it's simpler for me. But I'm going to go ahead and show that morph in that's morph. Show the morph in the property hierarchy. I'm going to expand it down to the controllers. I'm going to set up the controllers. I'm going to take the full head morph Bob. That's going to be the multiply. And I'm going to go find the other dial, the eye close. And that's going to be the additive. So I just drag and drop them over there, and you can see they're set up right there. There's that, there's that. So now if I undo all that, I got Control Shift F. There you go. Restore it. So I dial in the head morph, everything's fine. If I close, that was the right eye we're on now. Close the right eye, and you can see it's closed. So obviously that morph's kicked in. And when you undial the head, that morph undials. So it only works with the head and doesn't mess up everything else. So what I'm missing now, we can do a control dial. I'm just going to create a new dial over here. I'm just going to right click and create a new property, and we're going to call this Control Bob. Over here I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to name it just Bob. And I'm going to leave everything else the same for now except for the limits, because I got a thing about limits. And now of course right now that doesn't do anything. And I've still got the eye closed, so I'm going to Control Shift F to restore the figure again. Still doesn't do anything. So I'm going to take it, I'm going to apply the values, the dials that I wanted to apply, and then I'm going to do the ERC freeze. And you can see it's going to apply Bob and Bob's head. So now this dial controls those two dials, and I got one dial that applies Bob. Something a lot of people do, especially for the female characters, is they'll include custom nipples and navels. Those particular morphs duplicate morphs that are already in the base figure, and we really don't want a bunch of character-specific morphs that just duplicate existing morphs. So we usually have those set up as MCMs, as morph corrective morphs or morph controlled morphs, whichever way you want to think about it. And I'm going to go ahead and do a Bob navel just to show how to set that up. And again, it's going to be affected with the body. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to dial the body in. And I'm going to dial up the waist and the navel. And again, you'd go ahead and you'd export this out to your modeler. and call it MCM Bob's Navel. Take it into your model, do your modeling to get your custom navel, and then save that back out. And then again, with the navel still applied, because we're going to want it to apply with the navel when Bob's body is applied. So we're going to leave those two dialed in. We'll go to Morph Loader Pro, and we're going to load in Bob's navel. And again, we're going to go reverse deformations, yes. And that's going to back out both Bob's body shape and the navel that already exists from those morphs, from this morph. I'll say OK. So now here we have Bob's navel. And if I apply it, you can see that's Bob's navel. That's Bob without Bob's navel. That's the default navel. That's Bob's navel. And again, I want this navel to work when the navel dial and Bob's body are dialed in. So I'm going to go to the property hierarchy, expand it to the controllers, and Bob's body is going to be the multiply because you use the character as the multiply. And then I'm going to go find that navel dial, and that's going to be the additive. And so now, Control Shift F, when Bob's body is applied and the navel is applied, the Bob's navel kicks in automatically. And when Bob's body is not being used, Bob's navel isn't being used. So those are all cool and done. I'm going to go ahead and clean those up a little bit here a little bit more here, and I'm going to save them out. And I'm just going to set that there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these three here. I'll do the other three first. We'll do the other three first. I'm going to select them all, and I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to hide them, and they turn dark gray, so that's how you know they're hidden. And if you can't see them all of a sudden, go into Show Hidden Properties and check that. I'm going to reselect them, and I'm going to go to Set Presentation. I'm going to set them all as correctives because they're correctives. Correctives won't save out with shaping presets. They don't save out with the other presets, shaping pose presets. And it's possible in theory to set up clothing to ignore them. Although last I looked, that wasn't working right. I'm also going to go ahead and color them a big scary red color so that anybody who does happen to see them will leave them alone because they're not supposed to be used by the end user. I'm also going to go ahead and turn off auto follow on those two. That one's a property, so the properties don't auto follow by default. I'm going to go ahead and set off auto follow, turn off auto follow on the two morphs because I don't want the navel sucking. I don't want t-shirts to suck in when the navel's applied, and I don't want the eye closes to mess up hair. So I flip that, and that's the auto follow icon. You can just flip them on and off like that, or you can go into your parameter setting and turn it. There it is. There's a checkbox for auto follow, or you can right click and go into right there at auto follow, enable and disable. So there's always a bunch of different ways to do stuff. I'm going to go ahead and set the grouping now because they need to be in the right group. And the right group for these, because they're hidden JCM and MCMs and all that, would be over here. I don't have a Bob group under people, so I'm just going to go to people and then make a Bob group. And then these here, I'm going to clean up the names. So that's Bob's body. And this one here is Bob's head. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set their presentation, set them all to shapes. That way they'll save out with shaping presets and they'll show up on the shaping dial. I'm just going to throw some random colors on here because they're close to what happens to that color. Yeah, that's a weird color combination. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and there's a bunch of different ways you can put them in the right group. You can come over here and right there you can change that path, put them in the right group, or you can do it from here. You can go set property group, or you can just expand to the property group you want to put them in, and then drag and drop them. When you do it that way, though, it's going to close this back up because it has to redraw everything, refresh everything. So you just got to expand it again. You can find the one you want, drag it, drop it, and one more time. And drag and drop. I'm going to go ahead and save these morphs now. I'm going to get out of edit mode. I'm going to go ahead and save these morphs now. And I haven't set up morph icons yet because I don't have my textures ready yet. And I want my morph icons to have the texture on them. So I'm going to wait and I'll do that closer to the end. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead, save as, support asset, morph assets, and then select the content directory that I want them saved in. Of course, that's the one I'm working in. And make sure the vendor name is actually my vendor name. Give it the product name. And we got to go find these morphs real quick here. And I know that I had some hidden morphs. I can just check that whole group because I want the whole group to save out. And then under people, I had Bob. And under head, I had people, real world, Bob's head. And under full body, people, real world, I had Bob's body. So now if I come back over here to my content folder, you can see that Studio's written out the data folder. And far enough in, you get to the PA name, product name, and there are the dials, all nice and prettily saved out. So I'm going to go ahead and save some shaping presets. I'm not a big fan of them, but some people like them. A lot of characters have them, so I'm going to go ahead and do some too. And I'm going to do a shaping preset that applies both of my morphs. So it just applies that morph there. So dial that morph in. We'll come over here to save as shaping preset, and make sure it's under my folder. We're going to go Bob shape apply. Does that work? No, let's do this. Bob shape full apply. And over here, there's two ways to do it. You can drill down, you go uncheck all, and then drill down and find that one dial that you wanted to save the information out for. Or we'll do a full body the other way. Save as shaping presets, shape full, change that body. You can go check only all modified, and if you're lucky, that's the only morph, the only property that's actually modified, so that's the one that's going to save out. And you do another one for the head. I'm not going to because you get the idea. The easiest way, because you're going now, what about the remove presets? The easiest way to remove presets, I'm going to delete those just so I don't trip over them, is to go ahead and copy those, rename them, and grab them and drag them over into a text editor. Change the ones to a 0. I'm also going to go ahead and I name this one full apply. I'm going to throw an exclamation mark in the middle here. That way it gets sorted at the top, because I can't put an exclamation mark at the beginning of the name. But I can put one there so that the full will show up above the bodies, because again, it's sorted that way up until then, and then there's an exclamation mark, so that's okay. And if I come over here and I look at my folder now, I've got these shaping presets. Let me refresh it just to make sure they're right. Okay, so that applies. If I go to current, there you go. I did it again, apply remove. So there's the apply. There's my horribly named remove. I did it to both of them. It's not apply remove, that would be silly. Just remove. Alright. So there's apply, there's, whoops, it's not there anymore because I changed the name. Refresh. There's the apply, there's the remove, there's the body apply, there's the body remove. Normally there'd be a head, potentially navel. Females often have nipples, elf ears, stuff like that. But that's how you do the shaping presets. So now we're going to set up the materials for the character here. And to do that, I'm going to zoom in on the head. To do that, because I said I was going to show you how to set up the materials, I'm just going to load this preset that I already have ready to set up all the surface settings. So there's the figure with all my surface settings on it. And if I wanted to save out a regular mat, I'd go Save and Material Preset. And then, not over there, but over here, where I'm actually putting stuff together, we'll go Materials. If I were doing both 3-to-Light and iRay materials, then I would make another level of folders for 3-to-Light and iRay. I'm only doing one set of materials to show you how to do it, though. So I'm just going to do the one. And this one we're going to call Bob. We'll call this All Maps. And we just save it out. So there's Bob with all its maps. And we're going to go ahead, a lot of characters come with the genitalia material, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to set those up and do a cool little trick with that material, the file that we just saved, so that it'll be a hierarchy material preset and automatically apply genitalia textures as well. I've said genitalia enough. If that's not enough warning, this is your warning. This is where the nudity comes in. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to load in the male genitalia, make sure that it's parented to my figure. It's got to be in a hierarchy in order for hierarchical material presets or hierarchical poses. For the hierarchical presets to work, it's got to be in a hierarchy. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply material to that. I happen to have that material right here. And which one's which? That's the default one. Yeah, that's the default one. So now I've got my materials on both the figure and the genitalia. So I'm going to go ahead and save out a hierarchical material preset. I'm going to select the root figure and save out a hierarchical material preset, which for some reason came up there instead of my folder over here. I'm just going to resave it over that one because I only want the one map. And you can see there it's got the male and the genitalia both checked. So now I have one preset that will apply on both. I'm going to go ahead and clear that out, load them back in, load the genitalia back on them, just so I can show you that that preset applies on both at the same time. Now the genitalia, the male, if we were doing female genitalia, we'd be done at this point. Female genitalia only have one option really. The male genitalia has both the circumcised and the uncircumcised option here, right there. And they take different textures. So I have two different textures, and I want the texture to set that switch depending on which one it is. So right now I've got the, what is that? That's the circumcised? Yeah, that's the circumcised. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save out. I've got the genitalia selected. I've got the uncircumcised HD turned off. And I'm going to go ahead and save out a property preset this time. And again, weird place. This one I'm going to save out as, I got to move that so I can actually read it. Nope, it's not going to work. There we go. I'm going to save as Bob. Circumcised. And in this version of Studio with this style, you can't see them, but they're here. There's tabs up here along the top, and they fixed that in an upcoming version of Studio from what I understand. So if you're looking at this later than I am making it on a version later than this one, you might hopefully be able to see those. Or if you're using the other styles, I think they still work on some of the other styles. They still work, but I think you can see them on some of the other styles. But there's tabs up here. There's a shaping tab. I don't want to save out any of the shaping information, despite the fact that it looks like a shaping dial. It's not. I don't want to save out any of the pose information. I do want to save out the materials for the genitalia, and I do want to save out other, not all the other. I'm going to uncheck, and I'm going to go into actor and check that one there, and that's going to save out that parameter. And so I'm going to go now and turn that on, load the uncircumcised material, and then save out that property preset. And again, no shaping, no posing, materials yes, other yes, but not all of them, just that one. And so now if I have the genitalia selected, those apply the correct material and the correct morph at the same time. And that's how you do those material presets. So now we can go and we'll go ahead and do a character preset. For the character preset, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. In fact, I'm going to start all over. Bring in a fresh Genesis 3 male. I'm going to go ahead and apply the morphs that I want to be in effect. I want the control dial to be in effect, and I want him to load with his navel on because most characters do. And I want him to have the realistic mouth. So I'm going to go find that. Nope, face. I'm going to turn on Mouth Realism HD. So I want those morphs that are currently used. I want all those morphs to be applied when he loads in. I also want him to load in with his name. His name is Bob. And now I'm going to go ahead and save out a character preset. You just save out a character preset, pretty much like it sounds. I'm going to save that back here under characters because that's where most character presets get saved. And they all show up in a group for people who are browsing the library. It makes it nice to find them. So we're just going to save that out. Only I tried to save it under the same name as the folder, so it opened the folder instead. So I got to go Bob Duff so that it knows it's a file, not a folder. I'm going to save that out. So now the only things I have to do is I forgot to apply the material. So now I have Bob with all the morphs that I want to apply when he loads. His name is Bob, and he's got his texture on him. So now I'm going to save out the character preset right. There we go. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make morph icons and a thumbnail real quick. We'll show you a thumbnail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and find a pose, just a generic pose to use for the morph icons. I'm going to use that pose because he looks goofy. I'm going to use that pose because he doesn't look quite as goofy. And morph icons, we'll do the thumbnail first. Yeah, let's do the thumbnail first. I'm going to go into render settings, make sure I got the render engine is the right engine. Make sure it's the right render engine. I'm going to turn off those thumbnails. Thumbnails are 91 by 91, but tip thumbnails can be up to 256 by 256. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go, there it is, I'm going to go custom. I'm going to make that 256 by 256. And I'm going to find a nice, happy spot to do my thumbnail. And we're going to try and get rid of some of that dead-eye look he's got going on. We'll just give him a quick little expression. We'll make him a little triumphant. He's happy, he's almost done. He's smiling. That looks scary. Maybe a little less triumphant. Maybe he's surprised. No. Maybe he's suspicious. No. Oh, here we go. There he is. Sorry, guys. Yep. That's Bob right there. Alright. So check our positioning. Make him bigger. There we go. Make them smaller. There we go. Somewhere in the middle. There we are. Alright, we're just going to render that out. And we're going to wait a moment. And it's rendered. We're back. So right now I've got the folder path pretty close. So I'm just going to go ahead and change the path to where I actually want it to save, which is going to be under characters. And then I'm going to give it the name that matches the character, which is Bob. Apparently I couldn't remember that or how to spell that. So now over here we've got Bob. Get rid of that one there, that's extra. So we got Bob, there's 256 by 256. We need to go and resize that. I'm going to do that with my handy dandy paint program. I'm going to do this first. I'm going to get a copy of it. I'm going to name that copy tip PNG. That way it'll be the tip thumbnail. And that's the larger one. This one here I've got to resize though. And to do that, I'm going to go ahead and not that yet. I'm going to go ahead and grab that, drop it in as a new file, image, resize it to 91 by 91. And then I'm going to save that back out. We'll come back to that one in a minute. So now I've got my two thumbnails. There's the 91 by 91. There's 256 by 256. And if I look at my content library, you can see there's that. And if I hover, you get the bigger one. I'm going to go ahead and do morph icons now. And to do morph icons, first, if you don't already have it, you're going to want to go get, I've lost the spot. Right, there it is. And I broke it. You're going to want to go find it. It's at this page right here. I'll put that link in the description. It's over there in the documentation center. And what you're looking for is that guy right there. If you don't have a copy of that, just grab that, drag that over somewhere so that you'll have a copy of it to use whenever. Take that copy, throw it into your image editor right there, and you can see that it's telling you it should be 147 by 185. So I'm going to go ahead in here and I'm going to change my render settings to 147 by 185. There. And I think I'm going to go ahead and leave that position for the head. Yeah, we'll leave that position for the head. We're going to render two times here. We're going to render one for the head. We're going to render one for the body and the control. And we're going to wait for this to finish rendering here any second now. Alright, so I went ahead and rendered the body dial while I was at it, the control dial. I'm going to go ahead and name that. And I changed my paths and I'm saving them back here in the data folder alongside the morphs themselves. can see that right there. There's the control. There's the head that I already did. I went ahead and threw a shirt on it because it was weirding me out. And I think the other ones, nope, the other ones don't have shirts. For the females, they have to have shirts though, because we need to keep it family friendly. Back to the image editor. So I've got that image in there. I'm going to grab these two here, drag them into my image editor, and then I'm going to make a copy of that, paste them as a new layer, flip the layers around. I'm going to do the other one first. And I want the head morph to fit inside that box, because that box is where the dial is. I want it to look nice and pretty. So I'm going to go ahead and do some resizing here. And depending on your image editor, I'm holding on the Alt key while I grab that corner button there, and it keeps the same, what's that called, a ratio. So I'm going to go ahead, get it there, and I want it positioned inside the box. That works. I'm going to take my eraser tool and zoom in some more and just erase off that bottom line there, because you want to keep them, again, inside the box. If he does extend out of the box, he can extend out the top, he can extend out the side over here if you want him to. Usually the full body morphs do. But you always want him to end there at the bottom at least. That way it looks like he's standing in the frame and coming out of it. I'm going to hide that and then save right over the original. And then this one here, I think can I duplicate from here? This one I'm going to duplicate real quick. I'm going to try to remember how to duplicate with this. Okay, I'm not going to duplicate. So this one here, I'm just going to go ahead and I like his size. And this is going to be my control dial, so I'm just going to go and scoot him over a little bit so he's not completely blocking the dial over there. Control dial guy, he can stick out on the side over here, he can stick out on the top. Don't want him sticking out on the bottom. Oh, here's what I'm going to do, duplicate. There. Hide that one. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and erase him from the bottom because you don't want him sticking out over the bottom. And hide the template and save it right back over itself. And I'm going to switch to the other one. I'm going to position this one a little bit differently because this is I'm going to do the full body morph with this one here. So I'm just going to bring nothing because I'm on the wrong copy. There we go. So I'm going to bring them up a little bit as high as I can so I can just cut his head off and try not to get his mouth in there, but it looks like that's all I can fit, so that's what I'll do. And I'll just take and cut off there because that's where the full body morphs get cut off at. Alright, everything else is still inside, so I'm going to hide that, and this one I'm going to save under a different name, and that name of course is going to be full body morph. No, because last second I noticed it was going to save it as a JPEG. And of course full body morph. Now I've got those, so I'm going to go ahead and no, I don't have to do that. Restore the figure, and I'm going to go find my morphs here. I'm just going to do it this way: Bob and all. I get all the morphs at once, and back into edit mode. I'm not in the scene tab or the parameter tab. Alright, they're there. Now into edit mode. So I'm going to go ahead and add a card. The cards are the little ones, the icons are the small ones. You can have separate ones for these ones that show up large in the shaping tab. Or you can just use a large one and it'll resize them for when the dial is smaller. But I'm just going to use the card because that's the big one. It's the one that I have. And this is the body, so I'm going to put the body dial there. And you can see it's updated. And I'm going to do the head. And the control dial. And now I just need to go in and resave those dials so that it'll remember. And I'm just going to go save as, morph, support assets, morph assets. Make sure I'm saving it to the right location. And again, I want to use the same product name. I don't want the separate copy. So in case I'd forgotten that his name was Bob, I'm just going to find it, copy it, paste it, and there's Bob, so we're going to go find those morphs again. There was one under full body. There's Bob's body. And there's one under head, and it's Bob's head. And there's one under people, and that's Bob. So now when I load it in, or when anybody loads it in, it's going to come in and have the morph icons there. At this point, the only thing you would have left to do is to save out the rest of the presets here. You want to do thumbnails for them and clean up those thumbnails, of course, and then you'd be ready to go. And that's all there is to making a character in 45 minutes or less.